shine, shine your light. Shine, shine, shine your light. Shine, shine, shine your light.
Hello, this is Nancy Smith Mattox on WYTV7, Charlotte, North Carolina, broadcasting from Little Rock, Arkansas on Shine Your Light Radio Ministry. I'm so excited to be here today. I'm very excited for the guest that we have, a well-rounded, versatile young man that's doing a lot of good for everyone. So I'm so excited. Before I start, let me just say that WYTV7 in Charlotte is Christian Broadcasters Network, and we are a nonprofit, and we do take donations. So any seed that you can plant with WYTV7 goes toward broadcasting our shows and all the broadcasters' shows internationally. So it's really exciting that you can have an international view on any of our interviews that we do. So I'm really excited about that. So if you so desire, please plant a seed at WYTV7. Our guest today is a very versatile young man. He is doing a whole lot of good in the world. I'm so excited, and I'm excited because internationally he's going to be seen and known from this interview. Mr. Dexter Peggins is a pastor. He's from Augusta, Georgia. He's the founder of Kingdom Solutions Consulting, a twice published author. The names of his books are The Garden Experience, Key to Realizing Your Destined Life, and Perspective, which is the one I like, 7 stories from the Bible that will impact your mindset, your life, and your leadership. So I'm really excited about that. Mr. Peggins, how are you today?
Hey, I'm doing well, Nancy. How about yourself?
Doing fantastic. Real excited about this interview.
Awesome. Likewise.
Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Dexter, where you're from, what you're doing, how you got on this journey, and where you're going.
Yes, ma'am. Well, first and foremost, let me say thank you to you, Miss Nancy, for this opportunity to share your platform. I really appreciate you just being so gracious as far as reaching out to me, and I'm just really elated to be with you today. About myself, I'm originally from Augusta, Georgia. At least that's what I like to tell people. My father, he was actually a military man, so we traveled quite extensively growing up. And when I was 13, he was stationed at Fort Gordon. And so I was able to complete my middle school as well as high school. And then from there, I joined the military. And so about myself, I'm a husband, a father. I am a preacher as well, a life coach mentor. I wear a lot of hats, but ultimately the hat that I'm most proud of is just being an ambassador and a representative of God. How do we get to where I am right now? Well, I'll start off by saying this. Several years ago, I found myself in what I can best describe as my wilderness experience. I was frustrated, didn't understand why things in my life were playing out the way that they were. And I couldn't see the lessons that God was teaching me in those moments, in those times. Even though I was a preacher, my life didn't match the message that I was preaching. I had a good job, but I was struggling financially. I was preaching a message of peace, and in my soul, I was just really feeling frustrated and boggled down. And what happened is that I came to a place where I said, God, where am I missing it at? And God really took me on this really interesting journey where the lessons that he began to reveal to me really revolved around the message of identity and purpose. And so from the lessons learned in those encounters with God, they really opened up the door for me to be able to assist other people and ultimately to begin to live the life that I so desire.
Well, that sounds like a lot of our journeys. We put on our happy faces and we put on our good faces. And if we really have a good heart, we're helping people all along, trying to do our very best, when inside we have a total turmoil. So at some point in time, you have to come to a reckoning with God and say, what do I do? So it sounds very, very familiar, I'm sure, to all of our listeners. As a life strategist and a speaker, what do you believe is the greatest issue plaguing the people you work with?
Oh, definitely. I would say off top, doubt. Oftentimes, people have the question, am I worthy? Am I capable? People genuinely want to make a difference in this world. But there's something that we often struggle with, seeing how we are able to contribute to this world. We have such a low perspective and low view of ourselves that we find it hard to actually believe that we can do the things that we dream about. We don't see that as our own reality. And so helping people overcome doubt is without question one of the most common things that I'm asked when working with people.
Absolutely. We're constantly doubting ourselves, doubting other things. We're made that way. But with God's help and with God's strength, we can make it through. And I still say, if we have the heart to help people, then we will be the winner, and the person we're helping will be winners too. You said that you think that's the greatest issue plaguing, and I feel like that's really something that is really needs to be heard. And I think our motto at WYTV7 is, if we reach one person, then we've done our jobs.
Right.
So I'm excited about this interview and to hear you say that, because we're going to reach a lot of people that are doubting and that do feel that way. And hopefully this will be some words of encouragement to you. So I'm happy that you kind of put your pastor's hat on a little bit with it. What's the message that you hope to convey to others?
Awesome question. My message that I really try to get across in whatever platform or whatever capacity is that everyone has a purpose. If you really take the time to consider what it takes for an individual to come to this earth, I believe that we'll stop doubting the fact that we're here for a reason. It takes absolutely too much for one individual to come into this world, only for you to believe that your life has no meaning or no value. Ultimately, when you come to an acceptance that you have a purpose, I believe that we'll start to see the manifestation of what Paul speaks about in Romans 8, and that is that earth is groaning in expectation for the sons of men to be revealed. And so that revelation is you coming into an agreement with who God has called you to be, and now you operate in that capacity as that son. And you know that term is not gender exclusive.
Well, there again, it is hard to grasp what your purpose is, and it doesn't really matter where you are in your life. If you don't back off and just stop doubting and start learning to listen to God, you will begin in your purpose, and when you do, you'll be so much happier. But people do have a difficult time realizing what their purpose is. We do so many things in our life and in our lifetime that we don't really understand what our purpose is. So that's really, really true. I noticed on your information that I read that your mantra is live a life of purpose on purpose. So
Yes, ma'am.
That's your life motto. What is your purpose, Dexter?
Yes. So my purpose, I would have to say, is to help. I don't want to say I do it by myself, but definitely with the leading of Holy Spirit. But my purpose is to help lead people from their barren place into their place of promise. Now, I primarily been afforded the opportunity to do that by way of instruction, by way of mentoring and coaching. But I am definitely coming into a place where I recognize that God is enlarging my sphere of influence. And so I'm excited about the capacities in which I'll be able to convey that message to others and to help, people discover their own purpose. But most definitely, if I can help you readdress the wrestles in your mind, the false beliefs that people may come into an agreement with that is keeping them from realizing their purpose, then I've served my purpose ultimately.
Yes, sir, absolutely. And I understand exactly where you're coming from, because that's what Shine Your Light is all about. It's not about me. It's not about my life and what I've done, but it's how I help other people shine their light and get out into the nation and internationally into the world, to shine their light and to let people know they're there, and let people know that really they're not alone. They are not alone in what they're thinking and what they're feeling. We've all been through the same things, and I hope that our mantra at WYTV7 of reach one, if we reach one, we've done our job. I feel like that's really something that I can hang my hat on, and Shine Your Light really has been there, is there for people to help them. What do you believe what do you believe about God, Dexter?
Well, he is my source. He is my everything, and I know that I'm made in his image and likeness. So my responsibility is to reflect him, both in character and as far as how I just live in life. So ultimately, he is my everything, and I can't say enough about him. I love God.
What do you think God's done for you?
Well, I don't think it's a matter of thinking. It's really a matter of knowing. And what I can say that I know without a shadow of a doubt is that God has transformed my life. God has really helped me to come from a low mindset, a low place of self-doubt and lack of confidence, to daring to believe that, I am this great person that he's always called all of us to be. If we look at the pattern in Genesis 1, where he said, I'll make man in my image and likeness, and I've given him dominion, that's a lofty task if you really think about it. And if your mindset and your personal image is suffering, it's going to be hard for you to accept that truth. So ultimately, God has helped transform my mind to really believe that I do have dominion, and is I see the evidence of it every day when I impact the lives of people and when I touch my communities. So I can't say enough about God. I mean, we'll be on there all day, Nancy. Even as a veteran, I've been on multiple combat operations when I was in the military, and there have been specific times where I've seen the hand of God preserve my life. And so I'm just thankful. I really see this, what I do as far as the preaching, mentoring, and just being the person he called me to be. I see that as my responsibility, and it's a burden that I gladly accept, and that's to be his ambassador.
Well, I certainly thank you for your service to our country. We're in trying times right now, and we need dedicated military, and they seem to be coming through and really stepping up and doing what they need to do, which I'm so thankful of, because it's our life and our country that they're protecting. I noticed that you said that God gave you self-confidence. And I want you to elaborate a little bit on that, because
Okay.
you're a pastor. Before you were anything, you were a pastor, and most pastors have plenty of self-confidence. So I want you to kind of elaborate on that just a little bit, because you seem to have a lot of confidence now, which I'm happy God has given you that, to write 2 books and to publish them and to be a mentor and a speaker and a motivator. You really are impassioned. So explain that just a little bit more, okay?
Well, too easy. So I'll come from 2 vantage points. The first being, I believe it may be in Proverbs. It's escaping me right now, but the word declares that as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. And so what we have to understand is that you are a reflection of what you believe about yourself. And so regardless of how many affirmations you may quote or how many positive things you may say throughout the course of your day, if you don't believe that within your subconscious about yourself, then that's not what's going to be your reality. And so going to Philippians, the word declares that let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. And so Jesus Christ did not think it robbery to equate himself with God. And that was his main wrestle every time he would come into contact with the religious leaders of those days. They always gave him an issue about him equating himself with God. When he said that, I am the Son of God, they always found issue in that. But the reality is that he was steadfast in that reality. That was his truth. That was the truth. And because that was the truth, he was able to walk confidently in a world that was opposed to who he was as a person. And so I'm able to be confident because I am rooted in my identity in God. I am his son. And so because I am his son, I can be confident despite whatever opposition that this world may bring against me. And so because I believe that within my spirit, once again, as the word declares that as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Because I'm confident in the fact that I am God's, I am okay going through life. There's nothing that in this world system that can deter me from what God has already deposited within my spirit.
Well, absolutely, that is true. And we have a bad habit, especially if we have low self-esteem and low self-confidence, of thinking that God is omnipotent, God is all, God is everything, and there's no way that we could be like him. So that's really an interesting perspective that you say. And I really appreciate you quoting the Bible and doing quotes. I usually ask most of my people that I interview what their favorite scripture is, but you've already given us several that it really just it pleases me that you've done that, because that's how we feel. I mean, that's how we are. We feel like God is way up here and we're way down here. And how can we be made in his likeness and be more like him and close that gap? So I really appreciate that. We're going to switch gears a little bit now, and we're going to talk about the book. I want to talk about perspective, 7 stories from the Bible that will impact your mindset, life, and leadership. And I'm going to put you on the spot here a little bit because I know you know what's in there because you wrote it, and I know God gave you the words to put in there.
Yes, ma'am.
So, let's talk a little bit about that. Like what brought the book about? What gave you the idea to do that? And what events helped inspire you to write the book?
That's a loaded question, but it's a good question. Well, first thing first, last year I was invited to speak at a conference, a grace conference. And the message that I shared with the leadership really inspired that particular ministry. And afterwards, one of the elders came up to me and said, please tell me that you have that in a book somewhere. and I told him, actually, no, I don't. I just have my notes, and then everything else just flows out of me. And he was a little upset. He was a little disappointed that I didn't have it written down in a particular book. And then shortly after speaking with him, the apostle of that fellowship came to me and said, I know you got that in a book somewhere, right? And I said, well, actually, no. But the irony of 2 people coming to me with that response and with that desire really caused me to say, hey, God, am I supposed to put this in a book? And so, long story short, I got the green light from the Lord, and I put that particular story in a book. And what I ended up doing is say, okay, well, this is just a chapter. Let's make this a full book. And so I was able to capture several themes, things that I've overcome, and themes that I know that people are dealing with on an everyday basis. And I really just wanted to bring a practical approach, a biblically practical approach to how to overcome these issues. And so in the book, there's themes that deal with, what do we do to overcome, barriers that remind us of our pain and our emotional troubles. What do we do when we're feeling like our backs are against the wall? Is there a solution? Is there a posture that we can take? When you do get the breakthrough in your life, understanding that there's a responsibility that you have for those generations that are behind you, so that they don't go through the same issues that you've gone through. I also talk about understanding that you've been set up for success. I think a lot of times people assume that God is against them, but that's the furthest thing from the truth. God has been very intentional with setting up humanity to succeed. And so we talk about that as well in the book. So there's a myriad of themes, and I really just captured them from my own personal experiences, and as well as working with people, just understanding the similarities of issues. I said, it really makes all the sense in the world to try to capture these stories and put it in a book.
Absolutely. Yes, sir. And if there's one thing people want to hear, they want to pick up a book and be able to know that it's about something that's happening in their life.
Yes,
it's
ma'am.
real talk. It's just it's what they need. And I think that's why God leads all of us published authors. I've published 3 books. I think that's why God leads us to publish these books, so people can pick it up and relate to it. So I want would you just mind sharing maybe one other story that's in the book and tie it back to the story that's in the Bible for us?
Oh, definitely. So, without a doubt, one of the stories that I use in there, and it's actually the story. I'll use the story that I shared at this particular conference. There's a story about James and John. It says that they wanted to call down fire on a Samaritan village because the Samaritan village was not receptive to allowing Jesus Christ to come to that particular area. And Jesus Christ looks at them and says, "What manner of spirit is this in you?" And so the question is that how is it that you can be physically in close proximity to Jesus Christ, but far away from him in mind and spirit? Because they were suggesting a response that was not in line with the teachings that Jesus Christ had modeled before them. And so what I talk about in this particular chapter is that don't let your hang-ups become your hold-ups. Ultimately, later on, John would be used as one of the vessels that would administer the Holy Spirit, lay on the hands on the Samaritans when they received the Holy Spirit in the book of Acts, chapter 8. But had he not been confronted with the fact that he was holding on to a mindset that was in opposition of Jesus Christ, he would not be in position to be used in that capacity later on. And so there's mindsets that we currently have that God is going to have to put his finger on, and we're going to have to get it right with God, because ultimately God is wanting to use us in different areas. And so when God begins to confront us, we shouldn't look at it as a terrible thing. It's ultimately the door. He's opening a door for future opportunities for you to be used in a greater capacity. And that's what happened in that moment. They were confronted with a belief that they were holding on to. And God was saying that, this is not the way. And so it's time to address this issue. It doesn't mean that they weren't effective ministers before. What it means is that they just came to a place in their particular journey where God was saying, okay, this issue, you can't hold on to it any longer.
Yes, sir. And you know, we can relate to that, can't we? We
Oh,
really
yes.
can. Absolutely. I love that story. And I thank you so much for sharing that with us and highlighting that, because isn't it the truth? We sometimes become so protective of what we want to do, what we think we should do. For instance, James and John wanted them to accept Jesus in the community. And so they just wanted some bad things to happen to them because they wouldn't do that. And I mean, I think we're all guilty of that. So you're absolutely right. We do have to stop and listen when God's telling us something so we can get it right and move on. I want to switch gears one more time. We don't have that much time left, but I really want to talk a little bit about Operation Transformation, your
Yes,
prison ministry. I have a prison ministry too, where I go in and I speak to the inmates, and I train them and teach them how to write their story, and then I take their story and turn it into a manuscript and publish their books, as well as so they'll have a source of income, albeit small, when they go into the reentry program. So I'm really excited, and I want to hear about your Operation Transformation, because I'm always looking for people to hook up with to get our publishing process in the prisons, because they all have a story to tell, and it does help them a little bit when they go into reentry. So tell me about your program.
Wow, that's amazing, Nancy, and that's an awesome idea. I wish I thought about it, but I'm glad to know you. So I would definitely be picking your brain concerning that. But Operation Transformation, it actually was birthed from my first book, The Garden Experience. I had a meeting with the warden of that prison. And the warden of the prison was familiar with who I was and the work I was doing in the community. And they asked me if I had a class associated with the book. And so I was able to create the class, and it became an 8-week program that really addresses the root of the issues with a lot of our incarcerated population. And the first thing is we talk about identity. Many people in life, we really act from a place of who we believe ourselves to be. And so these individuals, while they made a mistake or whatever issue, they are not their mistake. However, society has a way of pigeonholing them to the mistake that they made. And so one of the messages that I convey is that if you hold on to this, if you accept this label from society, you will constantly continue to act out of that identity, out of that label. And so you have to get back to a place where you understand who God has called you to be. And so what we endeavor to do in that 8 weeks is to work through the process of identification as God has called us to be. We talk about understanding your gifts, how to employ your gifts. And then we do a deep dive on a particular psychology tool called a genogram, where you're able to look at your family history, and you can identify certain behaviors that have come down the line from your maternal and paternal grandparents and great grandparents. You can see how certain behaviors have found themselves in you. And then what you have the opportunity to do in looking at this particular tool is you can ask yourself, is this a belief that I have come up with myself, or was it placed in me? And if this is a belief that was placed in me, do I hold it to be true, as in, do I want to continue to believe this thing? Or will I make the decision that I'm going to go in a different direction? And I got to tell you, it's very powerful. I've had gang members who generations of gang. They come from a family where literally their grandparents were in gangs, and so this became a way of life. This was a worldview that they were taught to accept. And so here they are in their adulthood, and we're challenging those worldviews. And now they're saying, I don't hold on to this to be the truth anymore. This is not the person that God has called me to be. And so I've had some amazing results with that class. And I'm just excited about continuing forward with it.
Wow, that's beautiful. I love that. That really is fantastic. And it's just not only gang stuff. I mean, it's
Yeah.
domestic violence. It could be your temper, murder, or anything that they have that's filtered down through their mind. And we are a product of who raises us a lot of times, and it's difficult to get out of that realm of where you were raised and what you're doing. I mean, it's difficult. It's difficult to step forward and change and change your mindset. So I think that's a fantastic program, Dexter. I'm really excited to hear about that, and I really want to talk to you a little more. I'd like to see if we could maybe interweave my prison ministry with publishing their book, and maybe have one more week where we teach them how to do that, and then we publish their book. So anyway, I'd like to talk more about that. I'm so appreciative. I just want to show talk one more time about WYTV7, Christian Broadcasters Network. We are a nonprofit, and we do use our seed money and our donations to promote our broadcast internationally. So I'm really excited. I have a lot of international viewers that view my interview every week. My show airs on Thursdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So I'm real excited about that. And Dexter, I appreciate you so much for your time today. And I thank you for sharing so much information with us. We're going to help a lot of people with this interview. So thank you so much, okay?
Thank you.
We're out of time, so I appreciate you so much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Shine, shine, shine your light. Shine, shine, shine your light. Shine, shine, shine your light. Shine, shine, shine.